Hi, you boys and girls. Welcome to a new episode of the Reaction Shot Podcast. An episode where the conversation gets real, the laughs get loud, and the red noses take center stage. Before we get into the episode, let me remind you of the amazing podcast network family that I'm a part of. That's right, it's the You Run Podcast Network, a network jam-packed with some amazing creators with a wide range of podcast topics. So hop on over to the You Run Podcast webpage, that's yourunpodcast.com, and check out all the other amazing talents featured. But there's one in particular that I'd like to point out, and that's Under the Floorboards Podcast, a show where hosts John and Eric crack open the coffin lid on cult horror, modern nightmares, and the strange joy of fear itself. Listen as they navigate the burning circles of cinematic hell, where no monster is too twisted, no film is too cursed, and no laugh too sinister. Whether you're haunted by nostalgia or chasing your next big scare, Under the Floorboards invites you to descend into a fun and insightful look into terror and the entertainment. So please, check out Under the Floorboards Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, or at yourunpodcast.com. That's yourunpodcast.com. I am beyond thrilled to introduce a guest who's not just walked in clown shoes, he's redefined what it means to wear them. Actor, musician, clown, and now documentary filmmaker Guilford Adams joins me to talk about his wild, heartfelt, and eye-opening journey through the grease paint streaked world of American clowning. And the spotlight? It's on his brand new feature-length documentary, American Clown, premiering this Monday, June 23rd, 2025, at the legendary Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. This film is no joke. It's a deep dive into the cultural evolution of clowns in America, from joy bringers to horror icons, and everything in between. And get this, the cast is stacked with legends. John C. Reilly, David Arquette, Bill Irwin, Steve-O, and David Howard Thornton. They all make appearances. That's right, it's a full-on clown car of talent. So, grab your popcorn, adjust your rainbow wig, and stick around, because this conversation is about to juggle nostalgia, artistry, and a whole lot of heart. Now, let's get into Season 2, Episode 13 of the Reaction Shot Podcast, featuring my interview with clown icon, filmmaker, Guilford Adams. Hi everyone, I'm Dave and I love movies. So, welcome to my podcast, The Reaction Shot. In each episode, I'll dive deep into a movie of any genre that holds a special place in my heart. But here's the twist. I bring on a guest who has never seen that movie before, until now. We discuss, dissect, and review from pre to post-production to behind-the-scenes stories and well into its impact on pop culture. Will we agree on everything, or will we have wildly different views? Thanks for hitting play. Let's roll tape and find out. Fade in. Welcome back to the Reaction Shot Podcast. I'm your host, Dave, and joining me today is someone pretty awesome. He is an actor, a musician, a filmmaker, and a clown. That's right. Joining me today is Guilford Adams. Guilford, how are you doing today?
Hey, good. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Talking to you from beautiful Southern California. And I know it's been in the news a little bit lately, but everything is pretty much, pretty cool and chill here. It's a little overcast today, but
nice.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm obviously extremely happy to have you on here, and today we're going to be talking all about your career and an update on the feature-length documentary you have coming out called American Clown. So I do want to start off by asking, what is your background? What is your origin story? Who are you?
I started off, I mean, I got into clowning, kind of like did a little bit, a smidge when I was a kid, just kind of with my local church. And, enough to make my own costume and to pull off a couple shows and kind of learn some magic and learn balloon animals and stuff. And then I got into high school, and like a lot of people do, I drifted, my interests drifted, and I got into sports and all that stuff. And I got really into springboard diving, which is what I was all through high school and junior Olympics and when I got into in college. But then when I was in college, I was doing that, and I didn't feel like I was with my tribe, so to speak. Like they were
Sure.
swimmers, like so I was a springboard diver there, and I was only one of me, and there's a lot of swimmers. And it just felt like I just wasn't with my tribe. And I just on a whim, I took an acting class and I got into a play. I auditioned, I learned a monologue in a book, and I got into a play, and it was like it was full of girls, and it was like, oh, this is like good odds for
Sure.
me. My mom was a nurse, so I was like, nursing wasn't like something I was thinking about doing, but that's the only other time that I could think, well, there's going to be a really good girl guy ratio. And so that's what I did. And I got into that. I got into acting, and when I did that play for the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is I remember going out to a restaurant, and it was this Argentinian acting group was the one that was doing the play. It was a Peter Schaffer play, and it was um it was Royal Hunt of the Sun for anyone that knows it. And but they were in the restaurant and they kind of took it over. And I remember thinking, I these this is I English is a second language for all these people, but this is more my tribe than
Sure.
last athletic tribe that I was a part of. So I thought like, okay, well this is where I am. So then when I transferred from Tennessee to Texas, because I was out of state to dive, and I was like, well, why am I out of state? I came to Texas, and when I came to Texas, and I was getting into acting, I wasn't a high school actor. I was always doing sports, so I didn't have kind of a lexicon of knowing what to do, or the plays or plays that are done in high school and musicals. And so I led with what we do often as peoples. We lead with our talent set, with our skill set. So I was like, well, I was a diver, so I could do flips on the ground back then and tumbling and just good at prep. Also, clowning just felt like an easy fit for me because a lot of these people just didn't do that. And I could just move really well and be explosive. And and that's kind of, so I started doing that in college. I was like, well, okay, who are the guys that do this really well? And you go back and you look at the greats like the Buster Keatons and the Charlie Chaplins and the Marx Brothers and all these guys. And I used to just devour those films, like because films were cheap to rent at in Austin, and you could like just watch all these films, and you could go to the library and check them out and stuff. And it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. And when I moved to LA, I needed to get some extra cash. And they always tell you when I first moved here in 2000, keep your weeks open because you'll have to have a place for auditions and stuff. And so that's what I did. And then I got into so the one way to do that, to keep your weeks free, was to do clown stuff on the weekends for companies. And I worked for enough people and in their sort of characters and stuff that I thought, like, you know what, I could just do this on my own. So I started my own company called, at the time, a Clowns for Hire, which quickly switched to Los Angeles Clown. And the rest is just kind of history, having that name and that domain name, and really cutting my teeth on doing kids parties. I've probably done 4,000 kids parties in the greater LA area. You know,
Wow.
I, I got like a lot better at what
Sure.
I did, and just and just talking to people and talking in all sorts of ways, like talking, as a clown, but then also talking as somebody who booked myself at a party. Like there's an ease to it the more that you do it.
Sure.
It's on the job training. You're kind of like you're both an intern and a mentor at the same time.
Yeah.
And and then that was it. And because of that clown name, a lot of things kind of came to me. Initially, I would push them away, like, oh, we're looking for a like there was this one story where I had someone was looking for like a it was a big client, and they were like, oh, we want to see a, at the time I didn't have a lot of pictures of me in white face, like looking like really like Mr. Clown. I was more kids clown, so I did less. And there was a big client looking for their a production company looking for IHOP, and my buddy Laffy Pants, who I'm still friends with, that's his clown name. um he had a great picture, and so instead of like using saying, hey, I've got a picture for me, I was like, well, oh, do you need a big clown, huh? Well, I got my friend Laffy Pants, and I sent him the number, and then to this day he's like, hey, thanks for that 25 grand you sent me, it was awesome.
Yeah.
You should do those, if they call. And so I was like, oh my God. I learned by like not always being there to receive the info, that just always vie for the job, even if you like feel like you're not the expert. Like,
Yeah.
just, you will be the expert if you do it. Just keep doing them, instead of like trying to outsource it to other people. In any case, and around 2007, I got a call from a production, from some advertisers that worked with the Southern California McDonald's organization, and so I assisted Ronald in the field, actually with Laffy Pants too. We've been friends for a long time, so it was,
Awesome.
yeah, it was just like a small little ball that just kind of kept gaining momentum the longer that you kind of do it, and then that brings us almost to here.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, that's incredible. I love things that kind of happen organically. You said you didn't find your tribe right away, and as time went on and you started meeting new people, kind of stepping outside of different things to do, you've kind of learned the process of doing different things, and as you said, as time goes on, the process of clowning just came so naturally to you, and I love things like that. I don't know a lot about clowning, so I was very excited to have this conversation because I wanted to shed light for people who don't know, like myself. Is there such a thing as clown school? I hear a lot of people talk about that.
Well, yeah, so there is, and there's it's kind of funny that I was going to piggyback on what we were talking about. So in 1997, I auditioned for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. They had a clown school at the time, and it had that time in '97 had probably been going for, I don't know, 20 to some. I mean, I Bill Irwin was in 1974's clown school, so
Wow.
he's a
Okay.
master clown. So it'd been going on for a long time, but then they had been doing this audition process for a while, and to kind of bring it back to what you were saying earlier, or asking about earlier, my kind of me walking you through the steps of my career. In '97, I auditioned, and it was like a whole deal to audition because I didn't have a car at that time because it was taken away. I was in college, and I had to get my neighbors in Austin, Cinco, to drive me to Dallas to audition for the Ringling Brothers School. Um, and we got a flat tire on the way, and it was just like it was. But they were just super eager to do it because they're like, "What is this clown school, dude? We'll take you." Just super sweet guys. And when I got there, I auditioned, and this guy Dick Monday, who was doing the head of hiring at that time, was like, I was told that I would have some time at the end to do a monologue or whatever, and he was he's kind of like, kind of, he didn't have time for that on the day. And he's like, you know what, fill out this application, which I've since learned everybody filled out. I did not. Everybody filled out. They all have to do it. They all took a long time doing it. And then we can kind of take a look at it, send me a video, all this sort of stuff. But I was so peeved, and I was like this BFA actor, and I was like, I'm not, they should just see my talent for what it is. And so I never really kind of followed through with that. But that same year, a bunch of the people that I would come to know later on in life got in. One of them, Steve O, who a lot of your viewers might know, my friend Matt Morgan, my friend Matt Walker, my friend Tina Groff, my friend Ambrose Martins, like all these clowns got in that year, that I was, too prideful to kind of fulfill my obligations, or the requirements for auditioning. And so even sometimes the world takes you out of this loop, right?
Hmm.
And so you're on a separate trail, but you'll go back to the main trail eventually. You're kind of spelunkering down lower. Just stay the course. There's more than kind of one route to where you're going. And that was a neat kind of lesson for me too. It's like I still got into it. I had a great summer, not going to that. I went Shakespeare Festival, Grand Canyon Shakespeare, which is no longer here. And, so it still kind of worked out, but I didn't have this badge of honor of the Ringling Brothers thing. And so there was a school, to answer that question. There was a school, that was the last year they did it, was 1997. So I
Wow.
didn't have an opportunity to kind of readmit or whatever. Or, I was like, you know what, I'm going to give that another try. And honestly, I'm kind of thankful. I mean, of course, you always wish what would have happened if I would have gone, and But most ringling clowns don't do kids parties. I think once you do the big top, you're like, I'm not going to the person's backyard. It feels a little bit below you.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I've done the big top.
Yeah. Right.
So, and I've learned so much just being with kids and I've made a decent amount of money doing it. So I'm thankful that maybe I didn't, I didn't somehow like, I don't know, I didn't cut that experience out from my life.
Yeah.
But and I ended up on the same trail that I would have
Sure.
always had I just gotten into that school. And I didn't follow through with the paperwork. And that is so me. I mean, that is so me. Like I'm the worst. I'm just really bad at like getting assignments.
Sure. I'm the same way. I totally get that. I love what you said about, following a path and sometimes you stray off and kind of create your own course, but at the same time you end up going right back to where you started and getting on the right tracks of that. A little bit more about your career. You did touch a little bit on the fact that, you do have an acting career. You've done a whole bunch of different projects and some notable ones I've noticed. You were more recently on the morning show.
Yeah.
You were also on Glee. You were a clown on there, correct? You were
Yeah.
Huckleberry?
Yeah.
Huckleberry?
On Glee, I was known as Mr. Tickles or
Mr.
Judge Tickles,
Tickles.
the
Okay.
clown. And then Modern Family, I was Chuckleberry. Yeah.
Okay. Chuckleberry, that's correct. I remember those episodes and you definitely make an impact. You've done over, I think I read 70 commercials and probably the same amount of television spots and movies. So incredible. You're getting clowning out there in all different types of media. So my next question for you is where do you think the state of clowning is now here in 2025?
Oh, you know, uh, that's a tricky question, right? And that's part of why I set out to do this doc is, I'll when I'm a clown at a party, I have a lot of kids nowadays that say, hey, aren't all clowns scary? And I'm always like, no, no, no. And then I'll usually have some little like, oh, you're talking about Pennywise. Yeah, Pennywise is my cousin. He's gone all Hollywood. He bought a Cybertruck or whatever.
Love that.
And because I do like the fact that like I can't shy away from the fact that they seem how we're kind of related, right? And to them, a clown is a clown. I mean, you do that even as an adult. You're like a clown. When you're in clown, you're like, oh, you're a clown. Like you're not thinking about my wife or if I'm gay or like you're just like, oh, it's a
Yeah.
clown. Like there's just like
Yeah.
asexual sort of vibe to it. Like you're taking me at face value for what I am. And
Sure.
so kids are the same way, of course, and even more so. And but I've thought about that. I've reflected on that. I was like, well, why would kids say that? It's like, that's all they see, right? I mean, that's all they see. They see Art the Terrifier, they see Pennywise. They're not going to the circus. And the circus is, even if they did go to the circus, Ringling Brother does not have clowns anymore like they used to be. They're not seeing Ronald McDonald on commercials. They're not seeing Bozo on, they're not really seeing any clowns. Like the only
Mhm.
clowns they see are kind of the negative clowns and these clowns that are like like murderers and whatever else and scary things or the scary mask and stuff. So it's up to us. If we want to keep this tradition alive, we have to continue to kind of push for, I think, some better ambassadors. And I want to say I understand people like horror clowns. They're fine. I have nothing against them. I'm not saying I think they should be abolished or we don't need horror clowns. I mean, that's their space. I think they'll play out. I mean, how many times can you see a crazy clown killed? I mean, okay. But I'm not shying away from it. I'm just like, well, there's others. I
Sure.
think that there's a temptation for us to kind of paint these things in kind of a particular color. And it's like, well, there's other stuff though, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
clowns, medical clowns, there's Puddle's Pity Party. There's a lot of like, there's a rich tradition that you're just gonna let them just all be murderers. I mean,
Right. We need
I
a
mean,
balance. We need a
and they
balance.
there's actually some cool stuff they do. I
Yeah.
mean, whatever. I mean, what? So I think in a way it's going to take a lot of, kind of repairing and kind of working on this. But I think ultimately we just don't have a lot of ambassadors speaking positively about clowning. So we just need to have some more of that. Now, even if that is successful, I think it might just be a little bit out of fashion to do as heavily made up a clown as there used to be, or that'd be very specific. I tend to do a big white face clown if I'm going for a commercial or whatever else, because I just think that's usually what they're going to want, because that's what they have in their head. Like, okay,
Mhm.
clown. But for a kid's party, I do less makeup, and there's a reason why I do that. I don't want to scare the kids, and you do a red nose, they'll makeup on the eyes. So that could be. I think that's the dual process, right? Is that you're more specific with how you look, and you're just trying to do a little more outreach than you probably have in the past, because not everyone has that same sort of um I don't know, a good recollection of a clown, or in the younger generation, they've never even seen a clown outside of Pennywise or the Terrifier. So I think we just have our work kind of cut out for us. But part of me doing this documentary was trying to show what the face was like behind the grease paint. Was
Mhm.
to like, oh, these guys are like us. They got into this, and then they want to continue to kind of do this, and like, oh, that's, I'm kind of, oh, I look like her. And then, oh, that's not a white guy. That's like an Asian chick. Or, like, I think there's just like, I'm just trying to add that, like, that the personability, but behind the person, this humanity, as it
Yeah.
were.
Yeah. Incredible response. Like I said, I didn't know much about clowning, so I think having this conversation is definitely shining a lot of light on it. And I know when I was a kid, I had several birthday parties where we had clowns come in and, entertained all the kids, and I loved it. I do remember one time I had a clown who put like a dime behind my ear, and
Mm.
he's like, oh no, I lost it. And I don't know why. I cried. I cried so hard. I was like, where? I was like, now I have like a dime rolling around in my head somewhere. And he did such a good job of bringing me back and making it fun and exciting. For a moment, I was terrified, and then next thing I know, he's making me laugh again, and I'm like, oh, this is great, because then he found the dime, and I've vividly always remembered that story. I don't know why. I was pretty young. Not only do I remember the missing the dime and starting to cry, but I also remember how much fun I had and laughing with my friends, and how exciting the clown was to be there. And in my mind, and I think in children's mind, it's like almost like having a celebrity at your party. This really cool person's coming in and they're dancing and doing tricks and making people laugh. And I do think that's important. And, the state of the world that we're in now, everyone's glued to their phones. And as you mentioned, we have media such as these horror films coming out, which I do enjoy. But like you were mentioning, I would love to see the flip side of it. I would love to see, I think about the movie Patch Adams. I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah.
But I remember Robin Williams and him taking the clown nose and bringing it over to the kids and them honking it. I think stories like that are just as important to tell in media, in film, television, whatever it might be. I think it's just as important to tell those types of stories. So I think it's great that you created this documentary and you're getting that story out there, because I do think, as I said, over time, probably the last 20 years, we've seen that kind of fade out, and that's just from my perspective. So seeing it from a broader perspective from someone who's been clowning for years it's pretty great. So again, I do appreciate us having this conversation here. So it brings us to the documentary American Clown, which is having its Los Angeles debut on June 23rd at the Chinese Theater. How does that feel? Just that right there, knowing that this feature-length documentary that you have created is about to have its world premiere, and that story is most likely going to be distributed out, and tons of people are going to see it. How does that make you feel?
I say I have, it's a mixture of emotions, right? I mean, there's nerves, and I'm just happy that this film has kind of finally made it to the finish line, regardless of what happens to it. There's a bunch of things when you're making a film that can just derail it. And all of a sudden it's like you just lose the momentum. But, part of the success, I think, in having this was people's willingness to participate, and then also being open to letting other people in. I had a producer initially when they approached me, like, I think 2015, and then when he finally started filming in 2017, when the Field Ronald program was ending, that's kind of when we started, because I thought, like, well, we should just be taking like video of this, because this is only happening now, and regardless if we use it or not. and there's a little bit of it that's in there. Um, but it was just like but being open to the fact that like, okay, well, this is change and this is good, but we want to keep this thing going. So we had another producer come in around 2019 or something, and then the pandemic hit, and it was just being open to like what it's almost like keeping embers alive, like
Mm-hmm.
you got to just keep that flame alive. And we do it because we're just, I guess, in our DNA. Like if there's a fire, you see like five guys around, like, okay, guy, you give it a little wind over there, like you're just trying to get it, you're trying to get some warmth, and you're like, and that's the same thing you're doing with the film. You're just trying to keep this thing alive so it can kind of light. And in a way, we're still doing that. We haven't. We're trying to get it at this film festival. It's at the film festival, but then trying to get distribution. We're trying to just get a little, like, how can we get this thing going? And it's all in just service to get eyes on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a difficulty in today's day and age when things aren't sold by Netflix or Hulu or Disney or whatever, that to get some real eyes on it, and to have it find its target audience.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk any of your viewers out there or listeners out there who are artists or who are painters or musicians or writers, they tell you the exact same thing. The struggle is real. So for us just to even get to this point, I think if I was really good at congratulating myself, I would. But it's just like, hey, we made it. There was I saw a video of somebody, John Gilkey, who's a wonderful clown. He's not in our doc, but just the schedules didn't line, and he was saying to somebody, because I saw his social media, he was like, how many of these interviews I've done? I've probably done 14 of these. What's it like to be a clown, sort of thing. And then and ours actually is going to be seen by the public. So I think that for every one, there's probably 20 that are sitting on somebody's hard drive, and Van Nuys. They're like, God, I just want to get this thing done. So I'm appreciative of that. And it didn't come in no small part by everybody that surrounded me and that was like kept pushing and like, let's do this. And so when I was deflated, they were like, come on, this I'm gonna reach out to so and so. I'm like, okay, great, awesome. So it really is a testament to everybody around this film, my producers, Bill Parks and Jason Salee and Scott Barber. So I'm appreciative.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, congratulate yourself. Absolutely. It's incredible. It's incredible that you got to this spot. Like you said, there's a lot of people making art out there in whatever capacity. There's stories that people want to tell. And here we are talking about your story that you wanted to tell. It sounds like you've been making it for, you say about 10 years now?
Yeah, a little under a decade, 8, because my
Yeah.
kids were just born and they're in the
Okay.
doc. They're like little squibs. They're tiny. And, I had a wish list of people I wanted. Like I had people, a friend. I didn't at the time know Steve O, but I knew friends that knew him that went to clown college with him. And then I knew John C. Reilly, who's in the doc, because I did his kids' parties,
Nice.
back when they were a kid 20 years ago. And I live in LA. So I bumped into a lot of celebrities. And then there was a David Arquette. I did a movie with him in 2016, and he acquired, a lot of people don't know this, but he acquired the rights to Bozo. So when he acquired the rights to Bozo, I we stayed in contact a little bit. We talked about it, and I found out he was shooting some stuff with his Bozo, and he was like, "Oh man, it's so cool that our things are kind of aligning a little bit, and I'd love to help you out and that sort of thing." And then he was able to do that too, and just a sweet, sweet guy, and he's got another mission, sort of like he wants to bring positivity to clowning as well. So I think we can work together in that sense,
Yeah.
and yeah, just everyone. Bill Irwin. I was talking to somebody, my friend Ambrose, who again, the clown class of 1997, that went with Steve-O. And I was like, he was like, who do you want? I kind of went through his list and I was like, and that I really would love Bill Irwin. And for those of you out there that anyone my age or a little bit younger, Bill Irwin was like the North Star as far as a master clown. He's a Tony Award winning actor. He started the Pickle Family Circus. You would recognize him in like Popeye, and he's just it's just the sweetest, nicest man, and still is a touring actor and does. I just saw his show Beckett in New York, and he's just the real deal. And then I was talking to Ambrose, and and Bill Irwin, man, he's like, oh, and then Ambrose was like, oh, Bill Irwin, well, I could put a word to Bill Irwin. I was like, really? So it's like you never know until you ask. You
Hmm.
never. So you just put it out there and you're like, what's your wish list? And it's like, well, here it is. I'd like to get all these people. And we got it. We got everybody that we kind of wanted. And that was, at the end when the producers, of course, they want more names. Zach Galifianakis, he played a clown in baskets, and Eric
Yeah.
Stone Street. And all these are great ideas. But then at some point, you know, then what about that, little Robbie the clown? What happens to her interview that no one knows her? It's like, I'd probably lose her. I was like, I don't really want to do that because that's why we're making the documentary, is because of those stories.
Yep.
I
Yep.
get that you want these big names here, but I need these rank and file people. So we got to a place where it just felt like, okay, I think we're there. Because for everything I bring in, I got to lose somebody now, and I just don't want to do that. So let's try to find a film festival and try to tighten this thing up.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you definitely had some great names in there. People willing to, talk about stuff for this documentary. So David Arquette, you mentioned that he seems like he likes to bring a lot of positivity. I'm a big fan of David Arquette. I think he seems like he always generates that positivity. When I read about the Bozo the Clown aquarium, and I was like, this is great. That makes sense to me. So I'm glad that you got him for this documentary, for him to shed light on doing stuff like that as well. And then I know that you have David Howard Thornton in there as well. He plays Art the Clown, the Terrifier. You mentioned about how a lot of films nowadays just create clowns in like this horrific way, all these killings. So I think it's great that you had someone like him with this documentary to kind of see the perspective of someone playing a clown, such as the one that you're kind of saying, like, I would like to see someone portray a nice clown, an everyday kid's clown, as opposed to someone running around and murdering everybody. So I'm glad that you also have the flip side of there, Well, how did David Howard Thornton feel about playing a clown and making it so extremely violent? We talked earlier about balance, and I think with that documentary, having that balance is fantastic. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say about his perspective too. So
I think David, he has a love too, right? I mean, the reason that those films are as successful, you can't. I mean, even with David, like you can't just he's a wonderful guy, and like if it was just a clown that wasn't funny, just murdering people, would be like, I don't know, it's cause it falls flat a little bit. But the fact he takes such glee out of it, it's just like,
yeah,
it's like a little more captivating, and that's clowning. I mean, that's there too. I've always just phrased, or I've always, when thinking about this, and I didn't want to not include those people. I think that's a danger when we're like, nah, don't, they're not invited to our party. No, I
right.
just like it's like steering into a skid. It's counterintuitive, but you're like steering to the skid, dude, because once you've been in one, that's the only thing that's going to settle. We go like this, we're gonna. So I just felt like we need to address this. This is the elephant in the room. We need to talk about the
Absolutely.
horror clown. And it says here from the horror clown what he's got to say, and everything he said is like, yep, that's about right.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed finding his references. Like he told me, he loved the Marx Brothers and he loved all this sort of stuff, and it was like, yeah, we're the same. Oh, you know, if I don't know if there's any golfers out there, but and this is a problem I think just with a lot of people, just America and just the way that we think and the way that we want to put things and compartmentalize things and whatever. We see the horror clown. The horror clown is a specific golf club, not a golf club that you use all the time, but a golf club that you need like a sand wedge. The horror
Mhm.
clown is a sandwich. You don't go on the far, so there's other clowns and there's other clowns that are clubs that are in your bag too. You've got your woods, you've got your irons, you've got your kids clowns, you got your cinema clowns, you've got your medical clowns, whatever. You don't just use a sand wedge everywhere. Like you'd never get the ball in the hole. So I think a lot of times as Americans, we're like, and we use this term clown very loosely, very loosely. I could probably point to four different articles right now that are calling a politician a clown. So like there's no no structure around it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like us using like doctor for slang, like that doctor. It's like, well, does he have a medical degree or what,
Right. Right.
um so I think it's something that I want to take back. I want to take the clown back and to leave it with some professionals instead of just have it kind of misused and abused a whole bunch. And just know that we need more than one golf club, to kind of get through this game. We need a couple different golf clubs, even a three par, you're going to have three different things. You're going to have a putter and you're going to have, I mean, let's at least have a three par of clowns.
Yeah, yeah. No. It's actually funny that you mentioned golf because I'm not a golfer, but when I moved here, I didn't realize this. I literally live right down the street from the Memorial Tournament.
Oh,
So everyone talks about golf 24/7, so I feel like I've acquired some of the ideology behind golf and clubs and a whole bunch of different things golf related. So I love that analogy, especially for my local listeners and watchers. So that's great. Um, yeah, is there any surprising discoveries you made while you were making this documentary?
so we had, I mean, there's a little bit what we talked about in with David Howard Thornton and like the JJ Harrison's in this, and he plays a rodeo clown. Because as you're brainstorming and you're like, there's some people that do clown fetish and stuff on Instagram and stuff, and it was harder to get them because I think they have a lot of guys sliding in their
Sure.
DMs. But it but I was interested in talking and what is this and what does it mean to you? Because the questions are still the same. And
Mhm.
one of the questions I typically ask a clown, and I asked this to JJ Harrison, who's a rodeo clown, and what is a clown? What does a clown need to have? And one of the things that JJ said to me, who wears a cowboy hat and deals with steers and stuff, was like, and then I think about it like at least once a week. He's like, you can't just put makeup on anyone and they can be a clown. Like you can't do it. Some people just aren't built for it. They just don't have it in them. They don't have that. Either it's that it could be the need to perform, could be that what I think it is mostly is the compassion for the audience. You know, they just they don't have that. They don't care. They don't. They just they're not trying to connect. And I think that, all of the performers that I had, no matter what their stripes were, no matter, if it was David who's doing this horror thing, there's a desperate need for all of them to connect,
Mhm.
to connect to their audience. And I just found that so captivating that this clown is like you can be a clown and do a lot of different things, right? I mean, and you can be completely different skill sets, right? I mean, I think the rodeo clown doesn't juggle, but he knows how to ride a horse in an inflatable sumo wrestler suit. Like that's a skill set with the reins in his mouth. I mean, that's most clowns don't know how to do it. He knows how to do it. So I thought there, like I needed my perception of what a clown is really got kind of cracked open a little
Mhm.
bit. And seeing clowns and just performers on TV, like, oh, that's a clown. And a lot of it's like situational comedy. I mean, I keep coming back to Seinfeld. And, if you go into Seinfeld is a great status lesson in clowning because although no one's wearing a red nose, they're all kind of clowns with the exception of one. I mean, if I Kramer is a huge clown in that, you
For
know.
sure.
And then, so he's like he's the number three, right? Just the boofoo bozo, anything can happen. Then slightly better than him, like less dumb, is George, but like by a marginal amount. And then you have Elaine, who's kind of her own little spazzy clown, and then you have Jerry, who's kind of like he still has some weird clown things, but he's kind of the ringmaster, holds it all together. But he's
Sure.
still weird. He's still
Right.
kind of like he still can be. They're all. Once you start seeing what clowns are, you're like, oh, those are all clowns. They just don't have. So we love clowns in America. We love clowns. We just want them to look a specific way, depending on what the taste of what we decide are.
Yeah.
And so I think to throw the baby out with the bathwater is just a real mistake.
That's a really good perspective. It is so true. We have a specific idea of how we want a clown to look. I really like that. If you could bring back one legendary clown from history, who would it be and why? Or who is your favorite? Or who inspired you?
I mean, I would have to say Bill Irwin, just
Okay.
because it's like, and he's not gone. He hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, he's still here. He just I saw him when I saw there's a little performance. In fact, we all bootlegged it. Me and a couple of my buddies called Regard to Flight, he did maybe in the mid 80s, maybe the early, and it was just such a, it was right after he got the MacArthur grant. I asked him about it when I interviewed him, but he was like, it was like, I don't know if it's before, after, or during, but he was able to tap into something. He's so physically good. He's got like a dancer's ability to tell a story. Um, and I just loved him. And then I guess right up to him, and this is not a clown, but a mime. And I saw him perform once out here in California, Marcel Marceau. He was just otherworldly, what he could do and bring to focus with his body was pretty was pretty astounding, and the comedy and the humor. I mean, there's something that's clowning at its base. And I had somebody ask me recently, clowns and mimes, are they like there's a bunch of overlap with clowns and mimes. I mean, if there could not be a closer half brother, I mean, in many ways they're indistinguishable, except for clowns talk. But the physicality and the ability that a mime can have to bring to focus a trial and tribulation without voice and just with movement is nothing short of a miracle. And that no matter where we are and in what language we speak, that the universal language of physicality, that we could be like, oh, I'm here. I hope he gets through that hoop. I hope he gets out of that box. That box looks dangerous. There's just something just really moving about that you can do that through your physicality and present that set of circumstances. It's why I got into theater. It's why I got into acting. It's the building blocks of performance to me, and so yeah, Marcel Marceau. So since Bill is still alive, and God willing, another 30 years,
Sure.
if I had to bring somebody back from the dead, it'd be Marcel Marceau, which is a mime, but he was just fantastic. He'd probably leave me alone. He'd probably say something like that. That's good. Marcel, you shouldn't be talking.
Yeah, don't talk. Don't talk. Great. I love that too. What is one of your favorite things about clowning? What is something over time that you're so grateful for when it comes to clowning?
Yeah, wordplay has been my best friend. And the ability to, you gotta. So in any one of these situations, we were talking about clowning earlier, and I think there's something to be said for when you have this sort of like this arrow on you. Hey, I'm a clown. I'm a clown. I'm a clown. And you look tall, and you look tall to the other kids, and the kids know, like, I mean, I don't know. He's probably an adult, but he's a clown, so that's just, they're all big apparently. And but then you talk to them, and then, and depending how your clown is, mine tends to be a bit of a braggart, but then like I'm, like I'll say a silly fact that's not true at all. Like I went to school with a unicorn, and then they're like, what? I went to school with third grade unicorn. She was kind of teacher's pet, really, and then they're like, what are you talking about? And then just having them in this sort of rationale, and they're like arguing with you about a unicorn, like, dude, unicorns aren't real, dude. And then it's just, I just love that because I can engage with them on this fictitious set of circumstances. Now, any of my friends would be like, I'm bored, but they can't let it go.
Sure.
Does he not know? I don't think he knows it. Unicorns, Gilly, and I love that because you can make, I don't know, you can stir something, and maybe it's like stirring the pot. I don't know, but there's an engagement there, and the kids can be right, and there's just so much success in when a kid is right about something, and he feels like he's got you. So in medical clowning, often we work in pairs, and we'll go to hospitals, and like of course we'll have an agreement with this hospital. We've been vetted, we've done all the paperwork, all this sort of stuff. We've been commissioned to that specific hospital. Lots of companies do it. Healthy Humor, I'm trying to work on something too. Laughter League is in the South. In any case, they come to rooms. It's the most difficult time that a kid and a parent could be dealing with this illness or whatever. Maybe they're in the hospital a lot. Maybe they're just in for a couple of days to get some testing. But the majority of the time, that kid has no say in what's going on at all. They're told by their parents what's going to happen. The doctors come in, they come in unannounced, they just come through. So these clowns, when they come in to provide some respite, some sort of like ability to laugh, we're just as happy to be told no at the door by the kid.
Mhm.
We might because that kid or that young person has a voice and how they want to be treated at that hospital, and we're there to kind of give them that voice so they can say no, I'm not feeling it today, and then and we'll take that like absolutely. I wouldn't want us to come either. I was just thinking, I wish I wasn't here. I've been with this guy for anyway. We're just going to go ahead and go, and then maybe on the way out, your foot gets stuck in the door, and you're like, I got it. I don't. The door seems jammed. You have somebody look at this and like, and he's just like kind of engaging, but dude, your foot's in the door. Like, of course, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And then, but you can make him kind of, get just a crack of a laugh, or just like, yeah, hey, we'll see you later. I mean, can I fax you something later on or whatever you want to say, and then the kid finally you leave and it's just like even just like a smirk of like just a minute where he felt like or they felt like they were in control, that they didn't, that it's just a little bit of a normal sort of essence of what life is like before I
Sure.
got to the hospital 3 days ago. And that I just it's so fulfilling as an artist, to feel like it might have just I don't know, just taken a little bit of the edge off,
Yeah.
that just it's just, it's intoxicating and you want to do it more. And being able to read the room and be very specific and not do too, it's very hard. And a lot of clowns don't do it well. It's a lot of people don't do it well. They just overstay their welcome. It's like, dude, get out. You see a laugh, get out. Don't push this. And I just I love it, man. I love it. I could
Yeah.
if it's a job that you do on your birthday, you'd
Yeah.
be like, hey, do you want to work on your birthday? Like, for what job? Oh, for that? Yeah, I'll do that,
It's
because
great.
it's that fulfilling.
It sounds incredibly rewarding, and your passion for it definitely shines through speaking about it. So that's why I think this documentary, American Clown, is going to be extremely successful. And like you said, it's going to be word of mouth from here on out. Again, the premiere is June 23rd at the Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. And my very last question I have for you is,
Yeah,
what do you hope people take away from watching this documentary?
I could be a clown.
Perfect.
I
Yeah, I mean, honestly, everything you've been saying, that feeling you're mentioning about, visiting kids in hospitals and, throwing on the parties and all that stuff, it does sound really rewarding. And I mean, I would love to do that. It's knowing that, as you said, that's your art, and to bring that to life and make someone feel a specific type of way, especially with like laughter or happiness, even if it's for 30 minutes that you're there or however long, that is important, and it sounds super fulfilling and rewarding. And we need to bring back the clown. That's definitely important, and I think it's not anything I've ever thought about. To be completely honest with you, I've never thought about, the disappearance of Ronald McDonald or Zoe not being in the limelight anymore. And looking at films and televisions over time, there really isn't any media like that that's anything different than the chaotic horror type that we've been talking about. Every single one is, violence and torture, and which, again, I'm okay with. I enjoy that stuff. We need to have that balance. We need to have that flip side, and we need to bring back the idea of when we were kids, when I got excited at clown parties, and hearing how you get excited to perform for those children in clown costumes and make them happy and have those conversations. It is important, and that's why I think this documentary is going to be very rewarding for you, hopefully in the same exact way it is for, the children and anyone that you throw on parties for in your clown costume. So I'm ready for it. I'm ready for this film for sure.
Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this, taking time out of your day. And like I said, I'm looking forward to this. I hope everyone listening is looking forward to it. I hope we get some news on, when it's going to be available for everyone to watch. But I'll definitely be following along once that premiere happens and looking at the word of mouth. I will do my part of promoting the hell out of it for you guys. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. You can always find us on Instagram, American Clown Movie. And then, yeah, man, stay tuned. I hope for big things. So, just have fun, and for everybody out there, don't lose your kid. Don't lose your kid. I mean, not physically. If you have a kid, don't lose that child.
Yeah, don't lose them.
The kid inside of you. I think this world, we deserve to be just a little bit, I think just to reach out to each other a little more, and just with goofy play. I don't think everything has to be so serious all the time.
Couldn't agree more. That's why I really enjoy this conversation. It's great to hear people that have that same type of perspective, and putting that out into the universe. We definitely need it now more than ever, but at the same exact time, we need it all the time. So it's great to know there are people like you out there looking to keep that going and reminding people that is important. So you guys heard him, Guilford Adams, filmmaker of American Clown, the new feature-length documentary, premiering June 23rd at the Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, and hopefully coming to your screen sometime soon, theater, streaming, whatever it might be. Let's make sure we watch that. Hell yeah. Well, Guilford, thank you so much for being on. Listeners, thanks so much for listening. Watchers, thanks for watching. Again, this is the Reaction Shot Podcast. I'm your host, Dave. Guilford, have an absolutely great day.
Thanks, Dave. You too.
Thank you.